Hello there, everyone. Welcome to Slapendipity, Hobos of Happy Slappy Town. I am Eric. You may call me Eric. And with me, as per usual, is Devin.
Who you can call Gibby. I hate to just derail things immediately off the bat. Um, the last time I heard someone say the huge was in probably my favorite piece of media of all time. This is going back about a decade. Um, Duck
Your
Dynasty for the
mother?
PlayStation
Oh.
3.
Oh my gosh.
It's like the most lazy trash licensed game of all time. Me and our friend George bought it from Walmart as a joke because we're like, this is so stupid. We need to make a let's play video about it. And we did. And there was very little quality given to the game. The mechanics were bad, the aiming was bad. It was like glitching on us when we were trying to like talk to characters. But all the gameplay sections were interrupted constantly by what I'm going to call like skits or scenes from the show. But you got to keep in mind they were completely animated in like on the PlayStation 3.
So it so it was so it was bad.
It was bad, and there's one scene, I don't know any of the characters, I know nothing about Duck Dynasty, but one of the younger characters called something the Huge, and then, his brother or his cousin or his brother cousin, again, I don't know anything about the show, went off on this very poorly acted, clearly scripted tirade about the Huge. No one says the Huge. And then the other guy was like, I say it. And that's the literally only context I've ever heard that phrase used before.
LOL. I did not pick it up from Duck Dynasty.
Duck Dynasty, the video
Don't
game on the
watch Duck
PlayStation
Dynasty.
3.
No. You must have heard it in other contexts before.
I don't know if I have. Anyway, Eric, since you're the beautiful host of this episode, you're also the beautiful everything ever. I would like to begin in earnest with a question for you.
My name's not Ernest.
Rude.
Lay it on me.
You can't say that, Eric.
The question, Devin, the question. Lay the question.
Okay, so I guess my question is, how's your dog?
Which one?
Yeah, all of them. Tell me about your dogs.
They're okay. I have two older dogs who are going to be about eight. I think I was about to say they're about to turn 8 this year, and I was like, that sounds familiar. That I've said this on the podcast before. Maybe I have, maybe I haven't. I also have like a 1-year-old puppy, um, and sometimes old dogs are just persnickety little defensive on their territory. Let's go with that. But yes, I've been watching them all, as well as my 3 cats, to ensure their safety as others are away. And my one dog, who is a Shiba, we ever since we got him, we were like, he is an escape artist. How do we know he is an escape artist? Because he escapes. Like, doesn't matter how, he will once in a while find a way to escape the house and just run all over the neighborhood, etc.
He is the menace of Happy Slappy Town. People see him
He is a
coming from miles.
menace.
They're like, here comes that little squirrel with the underbite again.
Yes. And I mean, we learned, like, oh, hey, he's gonna da 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 da. So, over the years, we learned to be more careful. And, it only happens once in a blue moon at this point.
He has a lot of personality.
He does, and it's one of those things of like, well, well, just stop it, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like you can try, but like at a certain point, it's just gonna happen, and everyone knows. Like it's like trying to refuse eating pizza.
Mhm.
Like, yeah, you can not eat pizza for like a year maybe, but just, that one random day when you're hanging out with your friends and everyone orders pizza and you're like, well, you know. Anyway, the puppy has never escaped until now. And
Until now or up until now?
up until
So like,
now.
it's still she still has never escaped.
Oh no, scratch that. She has escaped.
No.
She has escaped once now.
Oh no.
Um, because somebody didn't fully close the back deck gate.
Oh
And
no.
thankfully, we were outside working on cars, and she just I imagine she just trotted down the stairs and started sniffing a bush, and I just happened to turn around to see her sniffing this bush, and I was like, oh my goodness. Because the puppy is like hard imprinted on my mom, and my mom has hard imprinted on the puppy. And I was like, oh no, if this puppy friggin' just goes, I'm not ready to do a chase like I am with the Shiva.
Mhm.
And thankfully, I just kind of called to her. She stopped sniffing the bush, looked at me, and just ran. And I just braced myself and like we low key just kind of tackled each other.
Mhm.
Like I just took her charge and like held her back, and she was just like, what happened, why are we stopping? And I was like, oh no. And then we got a leash, and then she was fine, and we put her back in. So the moral of the story is she will just run to the people she knows if she escapes.
When you said someone left the gate door open, was that an underhanded comment about our friend George who exited through that gate a few days ago?
No,
Okay,
no,
good.
that was my brother.
Okay, it was Jesus.
It was Jesus.
He has a habit of opening doors for people. So
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah, one window closes.
I was going more with the door to heaven because it's like around Easter time, but we can go with windows too.
Oh, yeah, we could. Wait, okay.
Okay.
Did you know, as of yesterday, it was Easter? Did you also know it was National Trans Visibility Day?
I did, and we discussed this in our group chat.
I just did not read it then. Whoops.
One of our friends posted Happy Trans Day of Visibility, and I said, yeah, Happy Transcend Mortal Life Day. And I think that was
I
the
saw
extent of
that.
the conversation.
Okay, okay. I saw that and I was like, what is going on? And I went on to the best social media app, Tumblr.
No,
And
Tumblr still exists.
yeah,
Oh
it's
god.
great. I love it.
I thought it died along with the 11th Doctor. I guess I'm mistaken.
Apparently though, like, because I was like, wow, that's really bold of like the US government to like have a holiday that moves along with a religious holiday of like one of the biggest religions on the planet, and they're like trying to call out the fact that like, this religious group has hurt so many people, and like what does that mean to have a secular holiday on this day of such an important day in the this religious world of like, the what is really the holiest day of the year. And then I talked to my brother and he was like, no, it's just a coincidence.
Yeah, I
I was
don't
like,
think
oh,
Trans Day of Visibility is moving. I think it's March 31st, whereas Easter's a different day every year.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I thought we were probing questions into like, what does it mean to make holidays for groups of people that have been hurt by religious institutions, but then also what do you do for the people that like genuinely and earnestly believe and worship in those religious institutions, and what does it say? And then it didn't matter.
Correct.
And I felt a fool.
Well, your first mistake was going on Tumblr. So, in year of our Lord
It's amazing.
2024,
It allows me to be anonymous. It's got weird, quirky things.
we're not going down the quirky rabbit hole again, Eric. Although
I
maybe,
know.
perhaps, I would go on Tumblr again if they had pretzel sticks.
I mean, they got pictures of pretzel
It's not
sticks.
the same, Eric. I can't smell pictures. That would be crazy.
No one can smell a picture.
Yes, they can, Eric. You were supposed to call back to our scratch and sniff design. I set you up and you missed the
I
ball. I
I
I put a tee out for you. We were playing t-ball and you swung and you just missed.
you you put the ball on the tee, and then I saw it, and I was handing you the bat as I was about to finish. It's fine. It's fine. Our loyal fans will remember, and they can knock the ball themselves down. Down themselves. Gosh, I'm a mess
They can
with my words.
mentally picture swinging the ball, swinging the bat at the ball, which I guess
And the
brings
ball
me
has a scratch and sniff sticker on it.
that would be an interesting concept.
A
Although,
smelly ball.
well, so like, listen, I can talk about smelly balls for a while.
Oh no.
But when you said that, I was like, you know what I really like is the smell of basketballs. And they kind of
Okay.
got those I don't know, this is a horrible joke, but I heard it in like 5th grade, so I guess I can associate it with some amount of childlike innocence. But have you ever heard the joke, how do you keep Helen Keller busy for hours?
No.
You give her a basketball and tell her to read it.
Oh my gosh.
So so I guess I was imagining the smell of like a basketball or a dodgeball, and I was like, yeah, if you scratched it, what if it started smelling good? And then my next thought was, there's nothing that smells better than a dodgeball or basketball.
Okay.
That's my train of thought, Eric. That's how my brain works.
Okay.
You said smelly balls, and I'm like, yeah, Helen Keller.
Okay. Hey, you know what's better than a well transitioned segue?
What's better than a well transitioned segue, Eric?
An abrupt segue. I watched Dune Part 1 while I was busy taking care of the dogs when they slept.
What is your opinion on Dune Part 1, 2019? Wait. Was that
It,
2020? Am I? Hold on, I need to look this up.
I believe it was 2019.
2021?
Oh, well,
COVID messed up my movie release schedule. I've said this like 1,000 times to everyone, but I work in a movie theater, and so I'm like, oh, that movie came out this month of this year because I have PTSD associated with it. But I guess COVID
mm,
really screwed that up.
a little bit. It was um it was a good movie. I watched it on Hulu, which turns out if you don't pay enough for the highest subscription of Hulu or whatever tier, you get ads during your movie. So that was a bit of a pace killer and like really took you out of it. Thankfully, they only played like two or three like 90-second ads in like the first half hour. So after that first half hour, it was smooth sailing.
So I definitely
Uh,
want to ask you your thoughts about the movie, but first I have to go on a tangent, because you're talking about Hulu Premium and paying to not have the ads.
yeah, yeah.
We talked a couple episodes ago about Netflix and buying subscriptions and nobody having Paramount Plus and all that stuff.
Yes.
I now pay for YouTube Premium, and I feel like I
I'm so
let you
sorry.
down.
Um, we all have our faults, and if this is yours, in the grand scheme of things, that's pretty tame, and I think I can accept that.
I always like listen to things when I'm falling asleep. I have this headband that has earbuds in it, or like headphones. So like you can lay on your side and listen to things. It's Bluetooth. Um, when I was a kid, I would literally just listen to audiobooks to fall asleep, which is
Mm,
why I am more scared of the television version of Pennywise the Clown than I am of the movie version. Because if there were two things I'd listen
interesting.
when I was falling asleep, it was the Harry Potter audiobooks or it was the series of Unfortunate Events audiobooks. And those audiobooks are narrated by Tim Curry, who plays Pennywise in the
Mm,
90s TV show miniseries adaptation of It. And so Tim Curry's voice haunts my brain, and so I am more scared of that version of Pennywise than the actually scary version because Tim Curry scares me.
huh, that's wild.
Anyway, now that it's the future, I listen to this stuff on my phone, and if you don't have YouTube Premium, you can't have your screen off. So that's like no good, and it's gonna hurt your battery. So I paid for YouTube Premium so I could turn the screen off. Yes, there are other third-party apps that allow you to do that, but I don't necessarily support ad blocks because I make my living off of YouTube, and so I don't want to use those third-party apps. So I just use YouTube Premium, so then the people get paid when I'm watching, even though there's no ads.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Jesus.
Should I go back to the
Dune Part 1.
fabulous? Thank
What
you.
was your opinion of Dune Part 1?
Well, can I also say really quick before it leaves my brain? Hulu is the equivalent streaming service akin to Tumblr. Like Netflix is like Twitter, Hulu is
I'm pretty
Tumblr.
sure the meme is that Netflix would be Tumblr because of their poor casting decisions.
I mean, maybe, but it's too popular. It's too everyone's on it. I wouldn't count YouTube. YouTube is its own Goliath. Dune Part One was good. It You could really tell it was like the first half of a movie. Like it was a lot of exposition and setup, which is fine. Like it you know, it's the first half of a some of the things were kind of interesting. So one of the things I realized is you could take like the base core of what Dune is, I feel has been around for a long time in many other stories of the recent, couple hundred years, where it's I am a kingdom. There is I am afraid of usurpers in some form, so I will destroy a house, and then someone survives and gets revenge. That's
Yeah,
like
I mean that when we're talking stories, you're very often talking about like, I'm one of those like crazy story people. You can talk about like archetypes and the collective human unconscious and like why do stories with these exact elements appeal to us. Um, but yeah, I mean, a lot of stuff like that happened historically where they're like, we need to kill the king's entire family so that when we throw the revolution, nobody can come back and try to claim the throne. Yeah, there is. I'm not no spoilerinos. There is a something happens in part two that will recontextualize that aspect of the story, and I hope you enjoy that part.
yeah, maybe I will. We'll see. There's also a bit of the outside of that, there's the magic system, which is like vague and weird. It seems to mostly just be mind control and
The basis
visions.
of the Force in Star Wars, yes.
The basis of the Force in Star Wars is telekinesis,
No, like
silly.
Star Wars is literally based on Dune.
They don't have visions in Star Wars.
Oh, yes, they do. Anakin has a vision of his mother dying and then his wife dying, and that's literally the only reason he turns evil. And they use this like special effect in Revenge of the Sith that mirrors the special effect used in the original Dune movie from the 80s. Like, Tatooine is Arrakis. Like, that is an intentional aspect of the Dune mythology that George Lucas took, because the book came out in the 60s.
What a plagiarist.
Well, again, Star Wars
Anyway,
is literally just a combination of these archetypes. He's like, what if I take a samurai and a cowboy and I put them in Star Trek, but it's also Dune, and they fight a robot samurai
double L's with magic space swords.
with magic space swords.
Yeah, if we didn't already say, spoilers. Not that there's anything too huge to spoil, I feel, in the first movie. Unless I watched it wrong, it seems pretty interesting what they're gonna do on, like, fate and the future, because, like, throughout the entire film, what's his name?
Paul.
Paul. Paul is having visions and, like, well, no, it's gonna totally happen. It's the future. But then towards the end, when he has to, like, essentially trial by combat uh Jameis on behalf of his mother so she can join the streak.
The Freeman.
Yes. I specifically meant their little, like, home
Oh.
thing. But yeah, essentially.
I like how you just
He
immediately right off the bat remembered Jameis's name, but you had to think what Paul's name was.
Because it's Paul.
what's do you remember Jason Momoa's character's name?
Oh, Duncan.
Duncan, Idaho.
Yeah, Idaho's a weird one, but you know, he had a love for Idaho, I guess. So Paul has a vision that, like, Jameis is gonna kill Paul, and then Paul kills Jameis in reality. And it's like, oh, okay, so these visions aren't, like, baked in stone. Like, you can change them. You just have to be good, I guess.
Yes, so that's a major aspect of the story. For context, people, I read the book, and I've seen both parts of the movie. The movie kind of steers away from this, I think, to be slightly more appealing to the masses, but also for sensitivity reasons. So a large part of the book of Paul's internal struggle is that there's this order, I'm going to call them witches, because archetypally that's what they are. There's this order of witches, they're all female, they're called the Bene Gesserit, and they have this magical power that's kind of like the Force, where they can see the future, they can influence people's minds by speaking to them, and, like, literally, like, controlling them with words. And there are no men who have this ability. And this group of witches that's, like, you know, this galaxy-spanning church, basically, they're behind the scenes, they, like, do things like manipulate who marries who to try to create, like, the perfect being, because their prophecy, their religion, is that eventually there will be born a man who has those powers. And that clearly, as we see in the very beginning of the story, is Paul. He has these powers. And they don't like that, because their plan was not for his mother, Jessica, to be the mother of, you know, the chosen one. So Paul is, like, slowly learning these powers of seeing the future and controlling people with the voice. And so as they begin their little journey and their political intrigue, and then they're fighting off the evil, like, forces of this other house they don't like, Paul starts seeing visions of the future in which he is this galaxy-wide tyrant. And in the book, they say that he's going to amass followers who are going to go on a galactic jihad, or jihad. And we don't use that word anymore because of ISIS and other real-world events that have happened in the last 50, 60 years since the book was written. So yes, a large aspect in the theme of the story is that Paul is having this big vision of the future in which he is a bad guy, and he is attempting to not have that come to pass. He does not want to be Big Tyrant, who then sheds blood all over the galaxy. So he's trying to not do that. He doesn't want to be like the chosen one. At least where you are currently in the movie, that's like his internal struggle. I don't remember if the movie goes into that as much as the book did, but that was like Paul's character is like, I don't want to be evil.
in the future. It's like, damn it, you're gonna be. Yeah, it didn't super go into it, but you can, yeah, it does basically say that. And I think that's like a fun, interesting, like, is destiny, can destiny be changed? Can you fight against it? Are we all just slaves to destiny, etc.? So that'll be a fun setup. I look forward to Dune Part 2.
I'm glad. I was a big I believed that the I personally preferred the first half of the book to the second half of the book,
Mm.
but I preferred the second movie to the first movie because I guess it's just more of cinematic, whereas the first part of the story was more like a who done it mystery with political intrigue, and so it was just more interesting to read, I guess.
Sure. What was there was another thing I wanted to say. Oh, the other thing I like about what they do with the magic system, which to me feels unique, but I was never that big into Star Wars, so like when Paul puts on his like I forget what like they call it, like special desert suit,
Mm.
the person is like going over everyone's checking it and then gets to Paul and has to make no adjustments and she's like what is this your first time putting this on and he's like yes and she's like how'd you know to do the part with the foot shoe things and he was like well, I don't know it just seemed right she's like okay
Hmm.
and then other instances throughout the movie of Paul just being like well so obviously we have to do this and everyone being like how? Why? That's not obvious. And him just going, yeah, it is. Cause like you're like living the future and like it's coming back. Like I that's such an in like
I think it's
I
like
feel like
passive visions of the future where it's like he goes to
yes.
tuck his pants into his shoes and he doesn't know exactly how to do it, but because he does have knowledge of the future he's like, okay, well, my gut says to do this. He doesn't know where that gut feeling comes from, but it's usually right.
And that's just such an interesting little thing because like and it's being used in small ways right now of like he tucked his pants into his shoes or whatever but I don't know it feels like that a lot could be done with that and but it could also be bad of just like well he's this type of character now because visions and it's like that's not how characterization works but if they pulled it off really well maybe that is how characterization works.
Yes.
So that's cool.
Well, I'm glad you liked the movie.
Also,
Yeah.
I just want to say the space pope, that's what she is basically. Their whole grand plan is stupid. It's so dumb.
What do you mean?
We want a chosen one who can bring about the future and past at the same time. You want you want a what?
Hmm.
You, you, it doesn't like you want time to just you want all of time to be in one moment and you can just experience it all at once. Like that doesn't do anything for you. Like That
It
doesn't
gives
make you
them
powerful.
control.
No, it doesn't though. Because if the future's already happened, you can't change the future
But you can
because
change
you're
the
existing
future.
it. But if you bring the past and future to exist together at the same point in time and space, then it's like you can't. What what do you, how? What is it? I guess part of it is like it's just so nonsensical I can't imagine it. Like if you just have all of time existing at once, like I don't know. I guess you just can't do anything. I don't know. Like that's too. Yeah, I don't know. It's goofy.
All right, Eric, I'm going to give you a piece of advice.
Yeah,
Never read Watchmen.
that's different. It's I under like I've read stories where like a being can experience the past and future and the present like all together and all at once, and it's like, oh, I can't say this thing because it hasn't happened yet. Like that's fine, but the idea of like we're gonna just break time and then we win
I think
somehow.
they're crazy witches, and that a large portion of the story is criticizing religion. And so, whatever their goals are, or whatever they're going to do, isn't the biggest important aspect of the story. It's just some, you know what they say: witches be crazy.
I'm no, I'm still on the time train though.
Yeah,
I don't care that it's a metaphor and it's brainwashing of the masses or whatever.
within the story, that's explicitly what it is.
Mm. It was low key kind of wild to me that Paul's parents aren't married. And I was
Well,
like,
that's a very
what?
important aspect of the story is that they, for political reasons, the father didn't want to marry the mother, but they were actually in love.
Yeah. But
And
and then he's like,
and
well, I should have
spoiler
married
alert,
you.
love is a very powerful force and a good thing.
Yeah. But it's so weird. Like, I mean, I'm aware, like, it's basically working on Middle Ages politics, so he obviously still could have gotten married. But like, who's gonna want to marry you with your own set of kids from your mistress?
I
But
think you
again,
should
Middle
watch part
Ages.
2, Eric. Many questions
Okay.
you have will be revealed.
Okay. I
Okay.
guess I'll just have to watch part two. Oh my gosh. My
Probably
cat is
before
running around.
next week.
Probably before next week, so we can resume our conversation of it on this here podcast.
And everyone at home, you should also watch Dunes Part 1 and 2 because they are good movies.
If you have Hulu, you can watch it with
They're
ads.
also they're probably on HBO Max because it is a Warner Brothers movie. So you can probably watch it there without ads. I do have one more question for you, Eric, regarding like your experience with the movie.
Yeah.
So when it was being advertised, like on the poster, it was very much billing it as a movie like with Timothy Chalamet and with Zendaya.
Yes.
And having seen the movie, I'm sure you now know Zendaya's barely in it. She's just
Yeah,
like
she's like the last 15 minutes.
she has visions of her in the future and then she's there for the ending, but like she doesn't have a character really. So how did you feel about like, oh my god, Zendaya, my childhood icon from Disney Channel plus the girl from Spider-Man's in this movie, I'll go see it. And then it's like a political sci-fi thriller and she's in it for 5 seconds. Like, do you think that people would be disappointed in that?
I mean, if that is your mindset going into it, yeah, I guess. I knew Dune was like an important sci-fi movie. I didn't expect there to be huge romance elements.
Hmm.
So I'm not like mad that she only showed up in essentially the last 15 minutes of the film because I don't care. I don't care about her really.
Okay. We've never actually talked about this, but I don't know what your experience with I don't know, I guess I'll say kid sitcoms is. One of the main characters in the second one, who again was all over the advertising, and everyone's like, "Oh my god, I want to go see the movie," is Austin Butler, who recently played Elvis, but he was also, I think he was on Zoe 101. Like that's what people know him from, right?
Okay.
He was another child Disney Nickelodeon sitcom actor,
Right.
similar to like Zendaya.
Hmm.
So, and literally, I do not believe beyond just being like, I like Drake and Josh, that you and I have ever discussed childhood sitcoms and like which ones we watched and what our opinions of them are.
I mean, if you want to get into that real quick, we can, because I'm a quick
All right.
5 minute max.
All right. I might be a little longer than that. Let's see where this goes.
Yeah, good show, funny. Clap, clap.
Drake and Josh or the other ones?
All of them. Doesn't matter.
Did you watch? I mean, me and you are the same age, and we also have brothers who are around the same age. But like, did you watch the Amanda Show when you were younger?
Yes, I watched. I mean, here's the thing. I was a dumb child. I don't know how TVs or channels worked. I knew I had Nick, Cartoon Network, and Disney, and 4Kids for Saturday mornings.
Before Four
And
Kids, it was the Fox box, okay, and then it was Kids
true,
WB.
true. So I just flipped through those three channels and was like, what is the more interesting show on? And then I just watched that. I've watched Drake and Josh, The Amanda Show, a little bit of iCarly. I was starting to phase out of it. I've seen like, I don't know, a few episodes of like Hannah Montana. Watch Sweet Life of Zach and Cody. Yeah, I think that's about it, really. Because Cartoon Network didn't really have anything like that.
Yes, Cartoon Network back then only had cartoons and so didn't have these live action like sitcoms.
Yeah, for the
My
best, really.
my TV watching experience as a kid was a lot. See, I very commonly say like I didn't watch the Disney Channel because I didn't. Like I never watched Zack and Cody or Hannah Montana or literally any of those shows. But I did in the 90s. I watched like the Disney Afternoon. I watched um Darkwing Duck and DuckTales, and there was a Timon and Pumbaa animated show, and I loved
Hmm.
Recess. And
Oh
these
yeah, Reese's.
like I think Doug started on Nickelodeon, then went to Disney. So I
Yeah.
watched a lot of 90s Disney cartoons, and then when the 2000s started and it turned to the Hannah Montanas and the Zack and Codys, I never watched those. Didn't watch any of those.
Sure.
When later in the 2000s they're like Phineas and Ferb. Didn't watch that.
Yeah.
I just literally didn't watch the Disney Channel. At one point they acquired Power Rangers, and so I did watch that on Disney, but literally nothing else. I was 100. I was a 70% Nickelodeon, 30% Cartoon Network, 0% Disney child.
I also, right, what I think we got too old, or even if we didn't get too old, I don't know about you, but I felt like, oh, Phineas and Ferb, that's a kid's show. I'm not going to watch that. Same thing with like Gravity Falls.
So I
However,
yes, I watched Gravity Falls in college. That's a
fair.
phenomenal show, my dude.
Eh, you know.
Ugh.
I did watch similarly like Recess, Kim Possible, etc.
I think another part of that is I didn't watch girl shows. Um, so
Girl
like
shows are so great.
I didn't watch Kim Possible. I didn't watch Zoe 101. Like I only watched the boy shows.
Nah, get out of here.
There's one exception to that, which we'll talk about in a minute.
Okay.
I think maybe Phineas and Ferb would have been more relevant to me than you because I have a brother who's 4 years younger than me. So the kid channels were on in my house for longer than they would have been in yours. But he
Sure.
did not watch Phineas and Ferb. Like we were just
Mm,
not Disney people. We're not Disney people.
mm,
Um, as an adult now in college, going back and watching like, oh, like Gravity Falls is a good show. I'll check that out. Yes, it's amazing. I got really into Star versus the Forces of Evil during season 2, and I started watching like that show. Watching it as it was coming out was so good. It was literally the only show that was like giving me these suspenseful series long arcs that were able to expertly capture like this is the internal personal struggle of a character. This is the like the world versus character struggle where like the entire the kingdom, the realm, the galaxy is going through something. And then also like I thought the romance was very good and I thought the comedy was very good. That show as it was coming out, phenomenal. I think it kind of dropped the ball at the ending, which is a pretty common opinion. um and then obviously there was like Star Wars Rebels, which I watched on Disney. But I just didn't watch Disney as a kid, and so people will talk about all of these Disney sitcoms, and I have no idea what they're talking about. Or they'll talk about the Nickelodeon ones, like Zoe 101, and I'm like, I didn't watch girl shows. Or they'll talk about what I'm going to call the explosion of music-based sitcoms.
oh, sure.
Your Camp Rocks
Victorious.
and Victorious, and some of them are movies like there's like Lemonade Mouth and even like High School Musical, which me and you theoretically were the perfect age for High School Musical.
I
But like
remember watching High School Musical.
I watched it in I almost said gym class, in music class in elementary school. They put on the first one. Um, but like I didn't watch the music shows. I don't know what a Jonas Brothers is.
Oh, I mean, yeah, I didn't watch the Jonas Brothers or anything.
So like I didn't watch the girl shows and I didn't watch the music shows. So my entire experience with like child sitcoms is just Drake and Josh.
Rip.
And then I said that there was one exception to the watching girl show, was iCarly.
iCarly,
Obviously, everyone watched that.
obviously.
It's crazy to me how much bigger iCarly is than Drake and Josh was, because Drake and Josh was just so much of a better show.
Yeah, I don't know if I would say it was a better show just out of I never thought about it that hard. I don't know. I guess it if I had to guess though, like I think the premise of iCarly might have just been a bit more interesting for when it was being released of like whoa, you can just make a web show with your friends and like this is the possible future we can live in, as opposed to Drake and Josh, which was just like the lives of two teenage boys
I'm glad you
working
bring
at the
that up,
movie
Eric,
theater.
because that is literally the entire reason I wanted to talk about this.
Okay.
So iCarly is such an interesting piece of like cultural history because when it came out, it literally was one of the biggest shows in children's entertainment. Like it was so big. And obviously its premise, for anyone who doesn't know, the premise is that there's these two teenage girls and then their friend who's a man, he's a gentleman, um, who
Freddie.
run a live streaming web show called iCarly, and people tune in and watch it, and so they're celebrities, right? They're like 15 or 14 and they're celebrities because they have this live stream show. But the show came out in like 2007. So technically YouTube had existed for like a year, but the internet at the time was all about like viral videos, like oh my god, look at this funny video of a groundhog, as opposed to what we now understand as like being a YouTuber or a Twitch streamer. So the future depicted in iCarly, where people would have these live stream shows, was so ahead of its time, it's not even funny. Like that stuff did not exist back then, but it does now. And so it's this really interesting piece of like speculative fiction where they're like, this is where we think technology is going. And they were right. But paradoxically, the show was airing on network television just around the time that network television was dying. Like, the final few seasons of iCarly were coinciding with everybody ditching cable and going to Netflix. The kind of, like, live entertainment streaming stuff that we do now didn't exist when the show started. It's what the show is about. And then it did exist when the show was ending, and the show arguably was losing ratings and getting canceled because of the people going to the internet to watch stuff like the in-universe iCarly show, so they weren't watching the show on TV anymore. It is so fascinating to me.
It's pretty funny.
And there's a character named Gibby, and so that's all I'm going to say.
Well, 10 out of 10. And then they made a spin-off of Sam and Cat from Victorious and iCarly, and apparently Jeanette McCurdy did not like working with Ariana Grande.
Yes.
I did not look into any of this stuff at all. I'll just like get a YouTube short or something.
A YouTube short?
Gosh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels bad for Jeanette McCurdy, man.
Her
She seems to like really have gotten the short stick on all of it.
Yeah, her life is really screwed up. I haven't read her book yet, but like she said in interviews that she has never received a dime from iCarly because her mother got all the money and then just like didn't give it to her. Which is crazy. So, I'm sure that right now there are people at home screaming, wishing we were going to bring up a topic. And don't worry, guys, I was segueing there. I'm getting there. So you said that you watched a short with all of this lore and stuff that you picked up.
Just the Jeanette and the Ariana one, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So there's a YouTuber named Quentin Reviews.
Okay.
I used to watch him a lot. He made a lot of content about Doctor Who and things like that. And he had a series called Fallen Titans, which was about like big people on the internet and like how they kind of fell out of fashion, fallen. So like he did one about like the Nostalgia Critic, right? And there are these big documentaries, right? That Nostalgia Critic video is 2 hours long. This man makes very long videos. I kind of fell out of his channel because he became very... He kind of like lost his mind for like a year or two, but he's gotten back on track. I think it's good. So he made a Fallen Titans video about Fred. Are you familiar with Fred?
Yeah.
So like when we were young, like so Fred was the first YouTuber to get to 1 million subscribers. And it was this teenage boy who put on this very high-pitched voice, and his character was like in kindergarten, and it's the funniest thing ever if you're 11.
Yeah.
And so Quentin made this 3.5 hour long video about Fred. And it was about the lore behind his YouTube videos.
Okay.
But you can't talk about Fred without talking about the fact that his YouTube videos became so popular that they featured him on an episode of iCarly, which then got him in with Nickelodeon, causing them to create 3 feature-length Fred movies, which were so popular that he got his own teenage sitcom on Nickelodeon that nobody watched.
Right.
So this guy, Quentin Reviews, made this almost 4 hour long video about the history of Fred, but the history of Fred intersects with the history of iCarly.
Okay.
So after the Fred video, he then made a video about iCarly.
Right.
How long do you think that video was?
5 hours.
About 8.5 hours.
Oof.
So he then, after finishing iCarly and making this very long video essay about it, was like, well, I need to complete it. So I need to now watch Sam and Cat, the spin-off of iCarly, where they take Jeanette McCurdy's character and they take another character from Victorious, Cat, and they cross over in this new sitcom. But he said he can't do that because he's a completionist. And so before he makes a video about Sam and Cat, he needs to make a video about Victorious.
Yeah.
Victorious was never as popular as iCarly. I've never seen a second of it in my entire life. It came out a couple years later, so I, who was already, like, too old... Like, I didn't finish iCarly. I watched, like, the first 2 seasons. Too old to be watching Nickelodeon. It was one of those music-based shows. I know nothing about it.
Yeah.
So he also... I think he's, like, a year or 2 older than us. He went into Victorious, also having never watched it. How long do you think the video on Victorious is?
10.
about 13 and a half hours.
Keep being 3 hours long.
So he released the video in two parts. And after the first part of the video, in which he's very critical, he thinks it's a really bad show. And he'll go off on tangents and be like, and then this happened, like in real life and behind the scenes. His first video was really popular, and apparently the cast of the show watched it. And it inspired
Ooh,
one of the actors who's in the show, who in real life, is musically inclined, that was the point,
right.
to start DJing and going around the country setting up these like, hey guys, we're going to have a rave. That's actually like the word they use. It's like a rave, but specifically centered on nostalgia from people in the late 90s, early 2000s. So the rave is songs from Drake and Josh, the Phineas and Ferb
Okay.
theme song, some Britney Spears stuff thrown in there, but it's literally the point of this rave is Nickelodeon early 2000s nostalgia.
Okay.
And so like he invited Quentin Reviews to go and like see one of his shows, and then explicitly told him, I'm doing this because like I was a teenager, I was on 4 seasons of a sitcom, it was just whatever, it was a job, but you have now shown me how important it is to people, and you made this long video, so that now has started my new artistic endeavor of throwing these raves for people who want to listen to iCarly music.
Hmm. Interesting.
And then of course he had to follow that up with the video about Sam and Cat.
Uh-huh.
How long do you think that one is?
Um, it keeps going up, so 16 hours.
21 hours.
Okay.
I'm
Isn't
currently
there like
halfway.
two
I have about
seasons?
4 hours left of that one. I've watched the entire series.
See,
Which is one of the motivating factors for me getting YouTube Premium. We're bringing it all back around
goals.
because I didn't want to have my phone burn out by watching this 40-hour long series about these shows.
Uh-huh.
So in my notes app that I keep for like, oh, I want to talk about this on the podcast, one of the notes is the conclusion and the entire point of this tangent I have gone on, which is that even though I never watched Victorious as a kid, even though I never watched Sam and Cat as a teenager, I was still culturally aware of the fact that they existed. I think I probably watched the iCarly Victorious crossover when it came out.
Sure.
But I, after watching this series for, 40 hours, still cannot square the hole in my head, cannot accept what my eyes are showing me, cannot accept what my ears are hearing, and cannot personally come to terms with the fact that Ariana Grande, the actress from Nickelodeon sitcoms, and Ariana Grande, the extremely famous pop singer, are the same person.
Yeah.
I cannot do that. It is the most, like, it's literally Hannah Montana.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, they changed her hair color, and she sounds different. This is a different human being.
No.
Like, I'm literally incapable of looking at Kat and saying, that's Ariana Grande. Or looking at Ariana Grande and saying, that is Kat. I can't do it. They are different human beings. I am incapable.
I mean, Ariana Grande, since leaving Victorious, has changed her look a couple dozen times. So, you know.
Yeah, she apparently, like, she was very dark-skinned when her music career took off, and apparently it was a fake spray tan. But like a lot of people apparently, including myself actually, assumed that she was like Latina because
Mhm.
her name is Grande and she had very dark skin. And
Yeah.
as we know, she is in fact not. She's Italian,
I mean, you know.
which is why her last name is Grande, and which is why she is capable of having extremely light skin and extremely dark skin.
Mhm.
So I think it's just because she looks so incredibly different that I just cannot. I can't do it.
It's fair, I guess. I don't know if that's fair, actually.
You don't know if
I
that's
mean, some
fair.
people, yeah.
It's just like, this is just a
I don't
problem
know.
with me. I can't look at them and be like, that's the same person.
Yeah, some people, they change a lot. Like I would say Tori, who was the main character from Victorious, who was actress woman. Like, she looks very similar. Last time I saw of like her in real life and her in the show, and some people just undergo drastic changes from puberty and some people don't.
I think just part of it is probably that I never watched the show, but I saw
Mm.
commercials, and so I just had in the back of my mind, like, this is a person.
Well, they are a person.
Yeah. And then I independently learned about Ariana Grande when her music got big. And then for me to then be like, wait, those people are the same people? I don't understand. It's just I can't wrap my head around it. And I guess that's a me problem.
Fair.
So yes, on my list, I'm glad that this happened because on my list I just had Ariana Grande question mark on things to talk about.
LOL. That's pretty great. We got there.
We got there somehow in the end, and it's not even the end; it's only the middle because we're gonna go to break.
Do 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 do. Okay, welcome back from the break.
From Le Grande
Now,
Chase.
yes.
Le Grande Chase. Sorry. the
And
name of our song is Le Grand Chase. Le Grand Chase? I don't know.
it's not our song, it's Kevin MacLeod's?
Yeah, our
We have we
our
have an,
intermission song.
we have a credit for him.
Yes.
Um One of the things, if you want to keep talking on the shows thing a little bit, do you know why you didn't watch quote unquote girl shows? Was it just your little boy brain being like girl show for girl, I'm boy?
I think I think there are a couple facets.
Okay.
One of them is simply that I only had brothers, and so those things were never on, right? It's not like, oh, my sister is watching it, and then I realize it's good, so I'm going to keep watching it. It was just like, there was never the incentive to turn on something called Zoe 101.
Mm,
I also, as a kid, had like, I guess I had an aversion to stupid teenager stuff. So, like,
mm,
Zoe 101 was a show, like, it's called 101 because it takes place in a school, right? It's like a high school.
yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
like, high school teenager when you're a kid, it's like teenagers are dumb. I don't understand why they're obsessed with their cell phones and talk in Valley Girl accents and are like getting into trouble. Like, just do the right thing. You're so dumb. I hate teenagers. And obviously sitcoms just like bring that to the extreme because they need to have the situation part of the situation comedy be, extreme, and so the characters have to act stupid. And so I just wasn't drawn to any media that was about teenagers. I could watch Ned's Declassified because it was about middle schoolers, it was about people who was my age. Or I could watch The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air because it was about, adults, maybe like 18 to 20.
I
Um,
mean,
but
he was in high school.
the teenage characters I just thought were stupid because when you're 9, you're like, why are teenagers so dumb? So there was no appeal for me to watch a show that advertised itself as, here are the trials and tribulations of a teenage girl in school. That just was not appealing at all.
So this is
Um,
kind of
yeah,
interesting.
you know.
Did you have any other?
I was just going to say that that really only applies to Zoe 101 and that my aversion to all the other shows were just that they were musical based or on Disney.
Okay, with the exception of Drake and Josh and iCarly.
Yes, but like I probably only watched iCarly because it was the spin-off of Drake and Josh.
Sure.
Like, oh, like I watched Drake and Josh when it first came out. Like, it premiered.
What
And
about teenage boys?
well, it was a spin-off of the Amanda Show. I'm like, I like the Amanda Show, and these are the boys from the Amanda Show, so I'm going to watch the pilot when it first aired. Um,
Fair.
and
Gosh,
so
you
then
had so much knowledge as a child. Sorry.
when so then when iCarly was coming out, I was very distraught over the fact that Drake and Josh ended, and I'm like, well, this has Crazy Steve and Megan, so it's probably similar.
Walls. I guess it kind of was. I similarly have no sisters and only brother. And yet, I watched the girl shows. And gosh, they were so good. Um, Kim Possible, great. You learn so much. um, I think one of the things for like specific, like, I don't know, I never like, so part of the reason I said you have so much knowledge, right? You were like, oh, it's the spin-off of Drake and Josh. I'll watch the pilot. I didn't understand how shows were made, even even when I was I started getting an understanding, I guess, by then. But to me, it was genuinely just like what is on. I'm not paying attention to like the real world, like actions and consequences of like, well, it's being made and now it's gone canceled and now it's blah 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 blah, and I was like, no, TV remote on.
Did did
I
did
was a
did,
dumb child.
did you watch Blue's Clues as a kid?
Yeah,
Okay. I never it messed me up for life. I never got over Steve leaving.
I
And
don't
and
care.
and I did. It destroyed me.
That's fair.
I was too young. I'm like, I don't understand what's happening. I don't like him, and so I never watched after that.
Sure,
I had
sure.
very similar opinions on Power Rangers. I'm going to go into a little history of the show now. Started in the early 90s. It was before I was born, but growing up, I watched it. And because there were a couple seasons out, I kind of watched them all simultaneously. So I watched Mighty Morphin, and Turbo, and Zeo, and In Space, and Lost Galaxy. And those were all coming out the same. Those had already come out, and so I watched them all together. It's like, oh, this one's on, so I'm just going to watch it. After, so the first couple seasons, there was always continuity between the seasons of the show, where some of the Power Rangers would still be on the team after they transitioned to the new series.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's 5 of them, 3 of them are gonna still be Power Rangers by the next series. But throughout that season, maybe 2 of them leave, so now there's only 1 of them. And then at the end of that season, he leaves. But then the 2 people who replaced them, and then the new 2 people from this season would go to the next one. So there's you can trace the team from the original inception in Mighty Morphin all the way to the end of In Space. For this 5 to 6 year period, it is one team that has members that come and go, but it is an unbroken single narrative story. Starting after that, they basically rebooted the series after each season. They're like, it's a whole, starting episode 1, it's a new team, new characters, never seen them before. Everything you just watched doesn't count. And so from my perspective as a child, I'm like, well, then I have no investment in the ongoing story. There's no characters carrying over from the last season, so I don't care. And so, and I was probably like 9 years old, but I was like, oh, this is stupid and for babies now. So when my little brother was watching Power Ranger Ninja Storm, I was like, this is dumb and they ruined Power Rangers and I never want to watch it again.
Lols.
So, and then the next one that came out was Dino Thunder, which was awesome because one of the Power Rangers was Tommy from the original show. And so they brought him back. And so therefore I did watch that season. And I loved that. And that was my first experience with nostalgia. Again, I was like 9. So I guess that my distraughtness over losing Drake and Josh, one of my favorite TV shows of all time, was mitigated because I knew that iCarly was made by the same guy, you know, he who must not be named, Dan Snyder.
Uh-huh.
And I knew that there were actors who were not playing the same characters, but were actors who were going from one project to the other. So I'm like, maybe I can retain some of the magic of the show I love in this new show. And the answer was that I couldn't, but that was the thought process.
Fair.
So I what I'm saying is it all goes back to Steve from Blue's Clues.
It was such a tangent.
Was it though?
And you really found 1 mile long string and made a circle with it.
And just kept pulling and pulling and pulling. I definitely do want to talk about another topic because I feel like we've been on this one for a very long time.
I want to end it with,
Yeah.
I think one of the great things about quote unquote girl shows is they're so much better with the romance. And as a romance connoisseur, but not really, moi, great,
So you think that like
amazing.
because he was more focused on relationships and like shipping culture that they focused more on the writing of those aspects?
Yeah. I mean, I also had a completely different view of teenagers. Like, all the teenagers I knew as a child were super cool. And I
Ugh.
was like, I want to be like you when I grow up. Because they were just cool, athletic people. And they were all attractive. And I was like, that's what I want to be.
No, I hated them. I'm
So then
like,
when I saw shows like that, I was like,
hmm?
yeah, let's go.
Hmm? No, I was like, you know who are teenagers? The Power Rangers, and they're awesome. And you're dumb and not like them. You're the bad guys from Power Rangers. I don't like you.
Damn, damn,
Hmm?
damn. That being said, I did stick much more heavily to the animated stuff of, Teen
That's fair.
Titans,
That's fair.
anime, Yu-Gi-Oh.
There's a very, very bad show, like really stupid show that I love on the Sci-Fi Channel called Warehouse 13. And
Okay.
the woman who plays Josh's girlfriend from Drake and Josh is one of the main characters on that show. So I watched that entire show. Anyway, let's move on to a different topic.
Beautiful.
Last week we were talking about third places and parks and gas stations. And if you didn't watch this episode, you have no idea what that means. But basically, we were talking about how we like sometimes being in nature and just want somewhere to go that's not our house or our job or the Walmart parking lot. But because our local parks close at sundown, as teenagers and young adults, we can't go there, which is stupid and it gives us nowhere to go. Last week, you and I and our friend George went on a nice little hike,
Yeah.
and I would like to talk about that hike.
All right, this is all you, because to me, that we just went on a hike.
That is selling it so short, Eric. We arrived at the parking lot. First of all, there was
Yep.
a little squabble discussion about where my car keys are going. I said, Eric, I don't want to have to carry my car keys. And you said, okay, I'll put them in my little fanny pack. And I said, Eric, that's silly. I'll put my car keys in your car and you carry your keys. So my keys are locked up and we only have to carry one set of keys because you got to save weight. Now, what our audience might not know is that George and I were Boy Scouts and you were not a Boy Scout. And so I was fully aware that the 10 ounces of my keychain being in our pockets the entire time of the hike would weigh us down. You gotta cut all the unnecessary weight, Eric.
There's like 100 pounds of unnecessary weight on me.
Oof. I feel that.
uh,
So we get to the
you have
park.
to laugh.
We get to the
Okay.
park. We're walking down the path. It's a really cool hiking trail. It goes by a river. The river's really high because it was just raining. There's rocks and there's rough terrain and there's mud and there's roots on the ground. And we're all talking, and me and George start talking about Dune spoilers, and so you cover your ears and hum a little tune for a little while.
Yep.
And as you go along the path, there's occasionally turns where it's like, okay, you can take a left, and it'll increase the length of the hike by like zero point 0.4 miles, or you can keep going straight. And every time we came to one of the forks, we were like, let's go the longer route.
Yes.
Every single time, we're like, let's take the longer path. Let's take the longer path. And we ended up doing the longest path.
Yes.
And I think that we were all, at least from my perspective, we were all happy to keep going. And it was great until we got to the
Yes.
end when there was this giant uphill section. And then you and George were not having it.
I mean, it's just all out of breath, out of shape.
So I guess my question or my like what is the moral of this story to the audience is like,
Uh-huh.
have you ever been in a situation where you make a decision in the middle because it's like future use problem?
Have I ever made a decision in the middle? You mean like to choose a middling option so it's not as hard, or like
So I
as
get
I'm in the decision I make another decision.
so if you're like, wow, I'm full of energy and not tired or sore at all, and there's only 2 miles left on this hike.
Mhm.
So therefore, I can go left and make it 5 miles because I'm totally fine. But then after the first 2 miles of those 5 miles, you're now exhausted. So if you had
Yeah.
just gone on the first path, you would have been properly exhausted at the end of the path and you would have had a great time. But because you chose the other path, you now have 3 miles of slog before you get to finish. Because
Yeah.
you made a wrong decision, whether it's like, oh my god, I'm so hungry, I could eat a horse, I'm going to buy 3 slices of pizza, and then you finish the second slice and you're like, I cannot eat another bite.
Right.
Just like that kind of decision making. The like, oh my god,
Okay.
bros, we're going to party, let's go all night, and then 2 hours later you're asleep.
Yes. Okay. Okay.
So I guess
Have I made this?
I want to talk about that phenomenon and other examples you can think of where you're like, yes, let's go, and then you immediately just like, no, that was a mistake.
I don't have any specifics I can pull from off the top of my head. I think I know myself pretty well and don't do things like that. Uh, I mean, also, like, while I did not the going up the mountain sucked, I wouldn't, like, regret it per se. It was just so steep and it sucked. Like, I have been out in New York City at like 4 a.m. because of decisions I have made with friends. And it's like, well, we have to get back to the apartment. There's just no other option. And that's just what you do. And like, yeah, it kind of sucks, but then you get a story out of it, you reminisce and blah blah blah.
I didn't know that anything like that ever happened to you.
Oh yeah, emo night was wild.
What is emo night?
That's a whole thing.
Oh, are people going to have to wait till next time to hear emo night?
People might need to. People might. I don't know, Devin. Will people need to wait?
I think they will.
Okay.
I will say
So
that
I'm not the bad guy. It's Devin's
it's
fault.
me. I will say that one time
He's the problem.
I embarked on a very long journey of watching 40 hours of a YouTube series, and about halfway
Oh
through I
my
started
gosh.
regretting the fact that it was burning out my phone battery, and so I had to pay for YouTube Premium. It's like if we were in the middle of the woods and we were like, you know what, this is too much, let's call in a helicopter. Let's airlift ourselves out of here.
Boo. Boo. No, when I put on the Jenny Nicholson video, I'm like, this is going to be a 4-hour commitment. I'm okay with this.
Okay, so you've said before that you don't really like rewatch movies or TV shows you've seen before. So
Yeah.
I also love Jenny Nicholson. She makes a lot of very long videos about just not random
Anything
topics,
she
but
wants.
things that are related to her interests, which usually have a common theme, but are technically nothing. Like her channel started off 100% about Star Wars and since has spun off into all this other stuff.
Yeah.
But like her 4 hour like Vampire Diaries video or video
Amazing.
about the church cinematic universe or
Less amazing, but still good.
the all those. I've watched those all multiple times.
Yeah.
Have you watched those multiple times, or is it just like television where you watch it once and you're done?
No, I'll watch it once, like earnestly, and then if I am like in a Jenny Nicholson mood, I'll put it on as like a background noise and like maybe half watch.
That's kind of funny. Yeah, if any of you guys are into long form content, I absolutely recommend Wendigoon, who goes into a lot of the same sort of thing where like you can watch a couple of his videos and then because they're so long, you can start them over. If anyone's into comic books, or not even comic books, just superheroes in general, there's a channel called Comic Pop, which has been going on for about 10 years. And it's this one guy who really loves comic books and has been reading them since he was a kid. He's in his like 40s now. and his two friends who know literally nothing about comics. And so he'll sit them down and he'll say, this is the Clone Saga from Spider-Man. This is the time that the Joker killed Robin. And he'll explain an arc of a comic book. And they've been doing this every single week for 10 years. And so there's 600 episodes to watch, and they're all amazing. And you can get to the end of the playlist and start over, and you've already forgotten everything. And whether you love comic books and you just want to hear two noobs hear about them for the first time, or you know nothing about them like me, and so you want to hear these stories and have other like audience surrogate people there, I highly recommend watching the show. It is amazing. It's called Back Issues, and the channel is called Comic Pop. And one more YouTuber I would like to recommend who makes really long videos is this silly little guy called Gibby's Good Idea, Bad Idea.
Hey.
He also has a podcast.
Wow. Also Jenny Nicholson.
Yes, and Jenny Nicholson.
That's fabulous. Just super quick on the comics thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know Bruce Wayne has a son, Damian?
Yeah.
And he was born out of date rape, essentially.
I think that
Catwoman drugged Superman or Batman, and then
Damien's mother is Talia al Ghul.
or Selena,
not
or Tali.
Yeah.
Okay. My bad.
I think
I only know so much.
Yeah, I think her father, Ra's al Ghul, is the one who
is the
drugged him.
grandfather.
Yeah. But yes.
Which is so wild. Wild. Also, Damien's a piece of shit.
Yeah, a lot of people don't like him, except for James Gunn, which is why he's going to be the Robin in the upcoming Batman movie. So they're skipping over all the good ones to get to the worst one.
Bruh. Bring back Dick Grayson and Jason Todd. Rip Tim Drake. I know nothing about him.
He's like one of the more popular ones because I think he was like, okay, everyone knows Dick Grayson, the original Robin, was Robin for like 60 years. Jason Todd was Robin for like 3 years, and then they killed him off.
And then he became the Red
Hood. And then Tim Drake was like, hey, this is going to be the Robin forever. And then some idiot gave Batman a son, and so Tim Drake just kind of got sidelined because he's not the one that everybody knows, because everybody knows Dick Grayson, and he's also not the interesting one who died. And he's not Batman's son, so.
Yeah.
So,
Damian should become uncanon.
I mean, next time they reboot, they may do something. So one of the reasons that Damian Wayne, again, Batman's son, Robin, is so like ever present, is because he was partially created by Grant Morrison, who is one of the most celebrated comic book writers of all time. He started in a non-canon Batman story and then made his way to canon. But like everyone loves Grant Morrison. The first artist who drew him, because whenever you create a character in a comic book, they're like a partial creation between the artist who comes up with the design and the writer who writes the character in the story.
Right.
The guy who drew Damian Wayne is a guy named Andy Kubert.
Okay.
Do you know anything about Andy Kubert?
I know there's a video game called Kubert.
Not the same thing.
Okay.
So
tell me more then. Okay,
so Andy Kubert is the son of a guy named Joe Kubert, who was a big comic book artist in the, I'm going to say like 60s, 70s probably. And he made multiple like DC characters in his time. And he had two sons, Adam Kubert and Andy Kubert. They formed, I think the father, Joe, formed an art school. And it's very famous and like people like him. And that art school is in Dover, New Jersey. And so when people go to like, I want to go to art school to be a comic book writer, like they go there. Like it's a hub for people who make comic book art.
Okay.
Now I don't know if it's Andy Kubert or Adam Kubert, but one of them lived in our hometown, and I went to elementary school with their son. He was in our grade, and third grade parents come in and talk about their job day, his father, and again, I don't know if it was Adam or Andy, came in and talked about how he was an artist working at Marvel and drew Spider-Man on our chalkboard.
That's cool.
And that is my story.
That was an amazing story.
I went to elementary school
What a
with the
humble
grandson of Joe Kubert, and that's the most famous person I ever went to any kind of school with.
Yeah, yeah. You know, Peter Dinklage.
Peter Dinklage also lived in, I think, Madison, New Jersey. My mother's actually friends with his mother, which is very, very cool. But I think you missed my sarcasm because we, in fact, went to school with people who are significantly more famous than we can ever hope to be.
Oh, I don't even know who they are, really. I don't care or count them. Not that they're fine people, I'm sure. I just have no interest.
And we're not going to talk about who they are. You guys can just guess. But you've almost certainly heard of them if you've been on the internet.
You like made it really vague, and then you really narrowed it down. You made it vague, and then you narrowed it down. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing here?
I don't know.
It's like we need some music to bail us out.
Save us, Kyle McCracken or whatever your name is.
Oh my gosh, don't disrespect him like that.
I think Kyle McCracken made, like, Powerpuff Girls or something. No, that was Greg. Craig.
I'll butter your cup.
Craig McCracken. He made Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends.
Awesome.
Anyway.
Bubbles. Mojo. Jojo.
I think we just need to record. I think we're kind of losing our edge. And I think if we go for another 23 hours, we'll probably get to the bottom of what we actually want to discuss.
What's that?
I don't know. I just think our brains will deteriorate. We'll open a third eye.
Our brains do deteriorate. Yeah.
Thank you for listening.
Yeah. Bye, everyone. Watch out for deer when you drive. It's springtime.